Hello, welcome to Guide to the Unknown. I'm Kristen.
I'm William.
I hope you guys are having a good spooky day. We're having a good spooky night. We're ready to share with you.
Oh boy, are we.
But let's get to a spooky thing first that we received in the mail.
Yes.
So awesome. So one of our listeners, Tracy, went to the Mothman Museum in Virginia not that long ago, and she told me that she was going, and I was like, happy trails, that sounds awesome. So Tracy sent us a cool little stuffed Mothman from her travels to the Mothman Museum in West Virginia.
It's rad. It's like a little
awesome.
Mothman, like stuffed figure. It's kind of hard to see. If you watch the video version, you can see the doll itself. It's got glowing red eyes.
Right.
We're dark here anyway, but you can kind of see the stuffed animal quality of it. It's very hairy.
Yes.
Which I like a lot.
I'd imagine true to life.
Like it looks like a shadow.
Yeah, it's cool. Like if you want to play with it and you hang it upside down, like it's flying, let's say, over the top of a car while it's driving very fast and keeping up speed with it, as the Mothman does.
Right.
It has these weird things that hang down and make it look creepy.
Oh, that's great.
It's really cool, and I'm excited to put it on our little shelf behind us where we record.
It's got a little glittery stuff on the wings, which I really like. Thank you so much, Tracy.
It was so nice. I was so excited to get that. So thank you so much. And I just want to read the really sweet note that Tracy sent with it because it made me happy, and I want to shout out her spreading some happiness. So we should all do that. So she said, "Dear Will and Kristen, I've been meaning to get this in the mail for quite a while now from the Mothman Museum. I just want to say how much I love the show. It's the perfect blend of comedy, spooky, and interesting all rolled into one. I've been branching out, listening to some other podcasts, but GTTU remains number one. Keep up the wonderful work you both do." From Tracy.
So nice.
So Tracy, thank you so much. That was really nice. It made me really happy when I got it. And just thank you for the awesome toy and the really sweet, touching note.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. It means a lot to us. It's really supportive. This is really cool and freaky. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Tracy.
Thank you for the random act of kindness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're really glad you enjoy the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad.
Cool. And I think that takes us right into our topics for this week.
Yes.
Kristen and I have prepared topics from the wide world of horror. We've done our research. We're going to tell them to each other now, just as we do every Friday on Guide to the Unknown. Subscribe on all major podcast apps, Spotify, and watch on YouTube.
Yeah.
Who's going first?
I'll go first.
You'll go first?
Sure, what the hell?
Kristen's going to go first this week.
Okay, let me just grab my notes on it. So, William, while I'm pulling these up,
Yes.
what do you think you know about the broadcast of War of the Worlds?
Ooh. We decided for October that we were going to pick some big guns topics.
Yeah.
We've done, absurd, small things before, like the Loveland Frog and stuff like that. But all October, we're doing big guns.
Yeah.
This is a very exciting one. I love the War of the Worlds. But what do I actually know about it? Because I think there are things that I know about it conceptually, maybe more so than the actual real story of what happened. But Orson Welles, without really telling anybody that he was going to, he had producers and business people who knew. But basically, they put on a production of a play that no one knew was a play, broadcast on the radio about an invasion of UFOs happening somewhere in New Jersey?
Yes.
Okay. And there was, mass freak out as people listened to this happen and thought it was really happening.
Right.
But I think that's all I know. I know I've listened to it before, but a long time ago. That's all I know.
Yeah. You're basically dead on with it. They're just like little details that are slightly different. So it was a radio play kind of thing, but it was a regular radio play. Like they had something called the Mercury Theater on the Air. So they've been doing it for 17 weeks when War of the Worlds came out. So it wasn't like they just photobombed the radio and did like a guerrilla flash mobby radio thing.
Surprise broadcast.
No, it was a regularly scheduled thing that was always on.
Okay.
So Orson Welles always did it. And they did kind of more traditional stories usually. Like they had done, Sherlock Holmes. They did Treasure Island. But basically Orson Welles wanted to do something different. He was starting to get a little bored of it. He wanted to shake up the format. So I'm going to tell you what the plot of the War of the Worlds radio thing is, and then tell you about kind of the hysteria around it that you alluded to.
Love it.
And then go into a little bit some people think that Well, number one, some people say that the hysteria was played up and that it's not as crazy as it was. And also some people say that this was all planned from the beginning, that Orson Welles and his cronies were like, oh, I can't believe you got so scared. But they wanted to freak everybody out.
That's awesome.
So I have some information on the background of the production of War of the Worlds that was super interesting.
Hell yeah.
So I knew like nothing about War of the Worlds. I basically knew what you said, but I couldn't have told you the plot beyond that. And the reason I even thought of this was that for some reason recently, Ryan has been into New Jersey history sort of things.
Okay.
Like, for whatever reason, it recently struck him that, like, man, like, Edison lived here and, like, developed the light bulb here and invented discovered electricity here. And also was reading about how War of the Worlds was, supposedly happened here. And he's been wanting to go and check out those places.
That's cool.
It's been fun. So
it is weird. Like,
it is weird. You forget, like,
we live down the road from the town Edison.
Yeah.
Named after Thomas Edison.
Right. I just realized I know why he got into this. He and I went to play Monster Mini Golf in Edison, and the Monster Mini Golf is Thomas Edison themed. So like on the walls, it's different things happening with electricity. Some of them with Edison. There's like a mural of like Edison and Tesla like having a fight basically. And there's like one mural that has like a street name on it or something that's a real street. And it was just kind of like, these are all, I mean, not really, but this stuff happened like right here. Yeah. Like Thomas Edison was here.
I was just there recently. I didn't notice that at all.
How recently?
I saw a bunch of monsters and stuff. 2 months?
They're monsters too. I mean, I would imagine that it was like that already.
All I saw were the monsters. I feel stupid. That sounds like very like intellectual and interesting. And I was
like
looking at Frankenstein being like, oh, that's spooky.
I posted pictures of it. There's like a phonograph with like a ghost coming out of it.
I don't follow you on the internet.
Ryan! It was on the Guides to the Unknown account. The monsters are more the 3D things in the middle. On the walls were kind of Edison themed things. And I think it made him like, this stuff all happened here. So we went to like Thomas Edison State Park a couple of weeks ago and walked around and went to the monument there. And then we went to Grover's Mill, New Jersey, which is kind of by Princeton, where there's a War of the Worlds monument that Katie, who's one of our listeners and one of my best friends, went to with her son Jackson a little while ago. So I kind of knew about it. And there's also a coffee house called Grover's Mill Coffee House that has a War of the Worlds theme. So we went there first, got some lunch, got some coffee, and then went and just looked at the plaque real quick.
Cool.
Because it's just a plaque in the middle of a park.
Sure.
There is a little bit more to it now that I think about it. I'm going to post all the pictures from it. I've been sitting on them to post along with this episode. But it's cool. Like, in a lot of parks, they'll have little markers or things that explain, like, the trees in this area are of the blah, blah, blah variety.
Yeah.
There are those little markers around this very short portion of the trail talking about the War of the Worlds. So it says stuff about the plot. It says stuff about Orson Welles on the next one. It says stuff about the audience reception.
That's neat.
It's fun. It's totally random. It's a very small spot of a park that has a field where like kids play sports, and it has, a playground and everything, but it's just like a cool, weird New Jersey thing.
And it's funny because I think it's within the story, War of the Worlds, that's just where the UFOs landed.
Yes.
So it's not as though that is where it was originally broadcast from
No.
or anything. That is the place in the fictional story.
Right.
I like that.
It just gets shouted out a lot, basically.
Yeah, I like it though when some element of horror has like real roots in a place or something that you can actually visit.
Yeah.
I might go to where they filmed Halloween.
Oh,
soon.
cool.
I've been planning a little trip.
Where they filmed the original Halloween? Yes. That's awesome. Ugh.
Found out it's about like 20 minutes away from where I'm going to be.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. You have to do that. So the coffee shop has like a mural of a barn being like invaded by aliens. It has like all kinds of War of the Worlds memorabilia. Ryan got me a little poster because it's the 50th year anniversary of the broadcast of War of the Worlds. Oh. It was October 30th, 1938.
Cool.
So we got a little commemorative poster from the Grover's Mill Coffee House. It was fun. So that's what put it on my mind. So now to go back to what I was saying, the plot is that they acted like it was typical radio programming. Like the beginning of it did say, it's an episode of Mercury Theater on the air. This is fiction or whatever. But even when I listened to it today, I missed when they said that. I was going to go back and I was like, no, you know what? I'm going to have the exact experience they had. Like I wasn't paying attention or something. I didn't notice them say that.
That's great.
So the plot is, the thing is that it's typical evening programming on the radio. There's music playing and stuff, but every once in a while, a news bulletin comes in and says something. So the first bulletin says that there was a series of explosions on Mars. And they're just like, just something to know, just, weird thing happened. Then the
wish the news was like that.
I know.
The news chimes in like, just so you know, something exploded like out in the sky and like we don't really know what it is, but it was weird, so we thought we would tell you. All right, back to the show.
That's basically all that it was.
Yeah.
So then the next news bulletin that comes in is that they say that seemingly unrelated, they haven't connected these things, that an object has fallen onto a barn in Grover's Mill, New Jersey, that it fell from the sky. Then later on in a news bulletin, they're on the scene with police and onlookers who are all crowding around a strange cylindrical object. Then Martians emerge and start attacking the people using a heat ray, and the reporter is abruptly cut off at the scene. So you're like, eh.
That's great.
So they're just now it's just pretty much all news bulletins. I don't even think they go back to music or anything. So they're increasingly alarming news bulletins, saying that there's an alien invasion across the U.S. and across the world. And it ends with a live report of a giant Martian machine releasing clouds of poisonous smoke across New York City.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of cuts off.
Wow.
They talk about New Jersey a lot. They're talking about Middlesex County, Plainfield, like lots of New Jersey towns.
Cool.
So they obviously paid attention to the geographics of it, which made it more real, number one, and is sweet and makes it very authentic.
Orson Welles was the original Kevin Smith.
That's right. I have said that before.
And I'll say it again.
Yeah. I really liked that they cited at one point black smoke over Jersey marshes. Doesn't that sound awesome?
Yeah, it does.
So then there's a break. There's a commercial break, like 30, it's an hour show. There's a commercial break like 30 minutes in or something. And then there's a break later. And when you come back in, they've dropped the act of it being like news reports or whatever. And it's kind of taken the style of a traditional radio drama. And you're following a survivor who's dealing with the aftermath of all this stuff. Oh. He meets another survivor. Like, it's not like all humanity's been wiped out or whatever. And they find out that the Martians have been defeated, not by humans, but by microbes.
Oh.
So it's going to be okay. We're going to rebuild.
Okay.
But because this was so realistic and because it didn't have a lot of breaks that would tell you like, oh, well, there's a commercial on right now. Like, why would they be cutting away for a regular commercial? People thought that it was real and they were freaking out. So like I said, there was some debate over how many people freaked out. There are like, I guess because you don't have resources to measure things the same way. Like, so they say that 12 meals. 12 meals were consumed in stress while listening to this. I would. So they said about like 12 million people listened to it.
Wow.
And they're saying like if 1 in 12 people called freaked out, that still means 1 million people were freaked out about this, which is significant.
Yeah.
But then there are other people who say the number is much less. It's been kind of like bumped up. And a theory that I really like, I don't know if it's true, but I think it's interesting and I like the idea of it, is some people say that this all built up and got trumped up as a huge thing because of newspapers having headlines and really running with the story for a long time because newspapers wanted to discredit radio. They didn't want you to be giving credence to things on the radio because it's taking away advertisers and things from them. So they're like, yeah, see, you can't trust that darned radio.
That's
so newspapers
amazing.
Really spread it like wildfire, even though it wasn't as big as they made it seem.
That is
which
amazing. Because like you think about that like now, like
yeah.
when the internet came out, people were like, oh, kids are getting lost on that internet, you know, and then your phone comes out and they're like, oh, they never stop using their phones. Yeah. It's funny to think that it did start with like newspaper people being like
radio?
Damn radio, whisking them away to other worlds. It's going to rot your brain.
Yeah.
Turns out everything that's new will rot your brain. Did you know that?
100%, of course. So, you know, numbers disregarded. People were freaking out. Calls were flooding into CBS wanting to know if it's real or wanting further about the reports. Local police stations and local radio stations were getting tons of calls. There was a town in Washington called Concrete, Washington that coincidentally had a short circuit within their phone system. So the phones were down. It had nothing to do with anything, but people who are listening to this thinking that something terrible is going on can't use their phones.
Yep.
So everybody was freaking the hell out.
Oh my God. That's great though.
I know. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So one of the producers got a phone call from the police or someone, I shouldn't write that down, but while they were on the air saying that he had to interrupt the broadcast immediately to announce that this was fiction because people are freaking out. But the show was less than a minute away from their break. And one of the voice actors was busy choking on poison gas at the, at the time. So like, it was like, 30 seconds out or something like that. Plus this guy's just like, out. So they didn't say anything.
Wow.
So cops started to trickle in to the CBS radio station to be like, you guys need to do something about this. People are losing it. And there ended up being not a physical struggle, but apparently, eventually, the room was just like full of cops, and there was a struggle between cops, the CBS page boys, and the CBS execs who are trying to keep the cops from going in and stopping the show.
Wow.
And I have a quote about it that is really awesome. Let me get to it real quick. Okay. So this is from one of the producers. He said that during the break, they were off, or no, excuse me, is this right? Oh, it was during the sign-off theme. Okay, so that was happening, and then they finished the show, and then this is happening. Okay. So he said they were off the air now, and the studio door had burst open. The following hours were a nightmare. The building was suddenly full of people in dark blue uniforms. Hustled out of the studio, we were locked into a small back office on another floor. Here we sat incommunicado while network employees were busily collecting, destroying, or locking up all scripts and records of the broadcast. Finally, the press was let loose upon us, ravening for horror. How many deaths had we heard of, implying they knew of thousands? What did we know of the fatal stampede in a Jersey Hall, implying it was one of many? What traffic deaths? The ditches must be choked with corpses. The suicides. Haven't you heard about the one on Riverside Drive? It's all quite vague in my memory and quite terrible.
That's great.
So crazy. Like, I love thinking of like the old timey pandemonium of that. Like, think of like, you know that movie Radioland Murders that we loved, where it'd be people just doing like sound effects with like coconut shells and stuff. Like, these were just people in a room with mics making this happen. There were obviously sound effects and things like that, but there's like a room of old timey cops like right outside wanting to step in and everything. And then when it's over, they flood in and they're like, look what you've done. There are people dying.
It is amazing
so
that they,
dramatic and crazy.
Were able to hold it off until the performance was over.
I know.
You know what I mean?
I know. Well, I would imagine a lot of calls, or they started to become aware that this is a problem like midway through the show. So maybe they started to trickle in while the show is still going on. They were kind of able to stave them off. And then there are enough in as soon as it's over. There's like bam, and they all flooded it. It's so nuts. So during all this time, which I'll go into a little bit more, like the time of them recording the show and also prepping for the show, Orson Welles was in the middle of rehearsing for this play called Danton's Death, also in the city, so not far away. And he had to leave from recording War of the Worlds to go to rehearsal. Like, it was the middle of the night, but they were just rehearsing around the clock. And, he went back to rehearsal, and a cast member came in a little late after him. And they said that there was news about him up in Times Square. So they all went outside to see the lighted bulletin thing on the New York Times building. And it said, Orson Welles causes panic. Oh. Like, can you imagine how crazy this must have been? Like, you did this thing, you just have to go to this other rehearsal. He was insanely exhausted. He rehearsed for 36 hours for this play nonstop at one point. Like, he's probably just out of his mind. And then it says your name causes panic on the New York Times building? As
like a performer, as an artist, is there anything better than that?
Oh, he loved it. Like, it sounds like at first he was like, I'm ruined. But then he realized that it was good. His first instinct was that this is bad publicity. And then he realized it was good, and he kind of like leaned into it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if there are stories coming out that Kristen Rogers Anderson is lighting the world on fire.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, come on.
How powerful can you get? Yeah. Orson Welles causes panic.
Oh, that's so great.
It's awesome. So the next morning, so this is a fast turnaround time. Like, this show was on late at night, and then all of a sudden the next morning they hold a press conference because this has been a huge deal. So CBS holds a press conference, and Orson Welles was taking questions from reporters. So here are some questions and answers from him. Question: were you aware of the terror such a broadcast would stir up? Welles: definitely not. The technique I used was not original with me. It was not even new. I anticipated nothing unusual. Question: should you have toned down the language of the drama? Welles: no, you don't play murder in soft words, which I like.
Oh, I love that.
Question: why was the story changed to put names of American cities and government officers? Because it was a British story. Welles: H.G. Wells, which is a coincidence, who's the author of the story War of the Worlds, which I'll get into in a minute. H.G. Wells used real cities in Europe, and to make the play more acceptable to American listeners, we used real cities in America. Of course, I'm terribly sorry now. So he was very apologetic and like, I didn't mean to do this, and kind of like apologetic and hangdog about it a little bit. Some people think too hangdog, like too studied, and that he was full of it, and he plotted this whole thing, basically. Yeah. So that leads us to the question: was this on purpose? Did they want this to be a big, scary thing because it was going to lead to a lot of publicity and stuff? So he said later that he did kind of hope that people had thought that it was real, but not to the extent that it went. But it seemed like it was all very wink wink, like, oh, I didn't mean for this to happen.
Right.
He seemed to be very cheekily playing it up. His collaborators and producers say, no, absolutely not. And the draft scripts and the anecdotes about that time support that. So it seems like he just liked the idea of Orson Welles causes panic and wanted to kind of like,
you know, I mean,
let that legend
talk about it ahead of
live.
time, but maybe he was hoping that
no,
the format of it would do something.
No, not really. I mean, maybe, but it doesn't seem really. He was not that involved in the writing of it and everything, and you'll see why. So he was totally wrapped up in that play. He basically picked the story, gave it to his producers, and were like, do this. They were like, this story sucks. They thought it was super boring and corny. And they tried to get in touch with him to change it, but they couldn't get in touch with him because he was just in constant rehearsals for this play.
Right.
So actually one of the producers lied to the other and was like, yeah, no, he says we have to do it, even though they couldn't get through to him.
Yeah.
But time was ticking. It was like a weekly, maybe not weekly, I'm not sure. But, you know, time was ticking and they needed to move on it. You gotta get something done. Exactly. Ooh. So they thought it was super lame and corny, but they were like, we got to do it. Basically, they thought that the narrator of the book, War of the Worlds, was boring. So they decided to lean really hard onto the fake bulletin aspect because the person was so dry in the source material of just being like, oh, this is happening, that's happening. They needed to make it punchy. So they're like, let's make it seem real and really real. And it worked too well, basically. They also removed some things that would have shown the passage of time and made it not seem like this was all happening literally right now. Yeah. Like there were references to last night's massacre and they took it out. Yeah. Because they wanted to make it seamless to draw listeners in, which they sure did.
Yeah, it worked.
Also the actors gave them a lot of input about how to make dialogue more realistic to like the way that they would speak. And actually the person who was being the reporter on the scene where the Martian spacecraft landed on that, farm in Grover's Mill listened to real reports of the Hindenburg disaster to listen to the way the reporter was talking during that because they saw that live. Oh. The people who were, reacting to it listened to that as well. And they all played off of that. And they basically just did too good a job.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's great, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Although it is funny because when I think about the Hindenburg, all I think about is, oh, the humanity. So it was all of War of the Worlds been like, oh, look at that. Like Jimmy Stewart.
I guess
landing in a big space.
I guess the guy really used some restraint.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So that's it. It does not seem like it was on purpose. Orson Welles himself was not even that involved in the planning of it and the rehearsal of it. It seems like they just wanted to, they thought that this sucks and it's kind of boring. It's just like, okay, Martians landed. At that time, at the time this came out, like UFO stuff was considered childish and very pulpy. Like that was stuff that was in comic books for kids. They were like, this is just corny. Like, we don't want to be doing this. And they're like, all right, so we'll make it interesting by making it have this cool format. That was Orson Welles' idea. He wanted that format, but they just leaned into it super hard because they thought it was lame. And just without his input or anything, they did too well. And it ended up seeming very real. And then he was like, yeah, no, it may have been my plan. Of course. Yeah.
It's funny. I've heard several very famous movies I've heard start with people being like, this is gonna suck.
Yeah.
Well, let's just find the way to make it fun then, because we gotta do it.
Right.
And then those things explode.
Yeah, like
Psycho was like that. Yep. Halloween was like that. Parts of Scream were like that.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Just like, like the horror industry itself was just like completely dissolved, basically. But like, I guess that is a great place for something really interesting to come out of when you're like, well, we have to, so let's just find a fun way to do it.
Right. And maybe that fun way ends up being really unique and it strikes on something that's really amazing. Yeah, but no, you're totally right. Like crew members and everything, like people would ask, producers or sound guys like, oh, how's it going? They'd be like, this show this week is going to suck. It's going to put you to sleep. It's really dull.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It also shows like nobody understands.
Right.
That's lightning in a bottle.
I was going to say, they're also doing it live, so there's a lightning in the bottle aspect to it.
Right, for sure. But it's like, something being different isn't always understood. Mm-hmm. It's all about the outcry.
Yeah.
And I guarantee that there are a million other things that have those same ingredients that we've never heard of.
Yeah.
It's just like, this was the time, the climate was right, something about that made it really take off. That's very interesting.
Totally. Isn't that cool?
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's a great story.
Yeah.
And then it comes all the way to the modern era with Tom Cruise in War of the Worlds, directed by Steven Spielberg.
It sure does.
Throwing peanut butter and jelly sandwiches out a window.
Yeah. Wait, really?
Yep. He's making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for his kids. One of them says something that makes him mad, and he throws the sandwich at the window and it sticks to the window and slides down.
Oh my God.
That's what happens in that movie.
So is that kind of like a little bit of a metaphor for tears sliding down a face? How there'd normally be a close-up of just like a single tear sliding down a cheek?
Yeah.
But it's a peanut butter.
Piece of toast.
Yeah. It's a peanut butter.
Yeah, it's a peanut butter. Peanut butter.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a great story.
Right?
Cool.
Very cool.
All right. Well,
All right.
Then from maybe sort of an original viral hit to a kind of more modern one. It's still about 20
this is a very
years ago.
viral themed episode. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The idea of art blending with reality, tricking people into thinking that fictional events actually took place.
Yeah.
Kristen, this week on the show, I'm going to tell you and our dear listeners all about the Blair Witch. Now, the Blair Witch is a franchise that's comprised of 3 movies.
Yep.
A lot of people don't realize that there are 3 movies. It's hard to call this thing a franchise.
Right.
Because to many people, it's a one-hit wonder.
Yeah.
They think of that original movie and probably the most recent movie that came out 2 years ago.
Right.
And they're just like, well, that was like, whatever. This is the found footage thing. Who cares?
I can't even conceive of not knowing.
I know.
1, 2, and 3. They're so deeply embedded in me.
I completely agree with you.
That's why I made a face when you said a lot of people don't know. And I was like, well, I guess a lot of people don't.
No, I'm telling you.
We certainly do.
I think the average consumer does not know.
I think you're right.
And I think that even people who are in the know about the movies don't realize that the Blair Witch franchise is, in fact, a franchise spanning multiple comic books, novels, and video games.
It's a multimedia franchise.
Way more than you really ever would have expected.
Yep.
So in talking about the Blair Witch, it's impossible not to talk about the way the movies were made. So I'm going to tell you about literally the history of the character, the Blair Witch, and her powers and what she does to people. But I'm also going to tell you about the way the creators came up with her and some of the many legends that surround her.
Cool.
Yeah, because even more so than the movies and all of the books and stuff like that, the franchise goes way deeper because there are essentially hundreds of rumors, speculation, fan theories, and interpretations of what the Blair Witch is. Because, spoiler alert, what I'll get to at the end of all this is that the Blair Witch doesn't exist.
Right.
Not only, obviously, in our world, because it's a fictional character, but within the world of these things, I think what people call the Blair Witch is not something that's a lady witch monster, whatever.
Right. It's not a solid thing.
It's something else entirely. I'm also going to spoil the hell out of as much Blair Witch stuff as possible.
Please.
So if you need to, and if you want to, go watch all the movies and stuff and look up things online about the video games, play them, read the books, because I'm going to spoil as much as I possibly can.
Yeah. I requested this topic. I love Blair Witch stuff. William and I have watched all of these movies a million times. We both read the book versions of it for our former podcast, Book Club Schmuck Club.
Yep, we have full reviews of the 2 of the Blair Witch books on our Book Club Schmuck Club feed. You can still go find them.
Yeah, we're Blair Witch babies.
Yeah, absolutely.
But William has played the Blair Witch video games, which he'll get to, and I haven't. So I asked that William do this topic because I feel like you have a more complete view of it than I do because of that.
It is strange. I feel like at a certain point, the Blair Witch happened for me in a big bad way.
Yeah.
I don't remember really being aware of it as it came out originally.
Oh, I do.
It didn't really capture my attention back then. I'm sure I saw it. I'm sure I did. But it wasn't until somewhere in the last 10 years that I revisited it and suddenly it's like it clicked in place for me. The way that Twin Peaks did. Where it's like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah, this rules.
And not only do I understand why people like it, I love it, and I want some more of it.
Yeah.
And so I have binged through pretty much all of the Blair Witch media and everything. So I'm going to tell you about the way that she was originally created by Dan Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez, the writers and directors of the original movie. Cool. Oh, I forgot. I've got all these visual aids if you're watching the YouTube version, youtube.com/talkbomb.
Yeah.
I also backed a Kickstarter for Dan Myrick.
Oh, cool.
Who's doing a new movie about aliens. And one of the perks was that I got the original script of Blair Witch. So I also have that, but I didn't put it in front of me. You're not going to be able to find it.
Okay.
But anyway, they were film students together.
Yeah.
And they realized at a certain point as they were watching all these movies and stuff that they got more enjoyment watching documentaries about paranormal events, ghosts and stuff than they did from actual horror movies themselves. And so they essentially decided to create some sort of a hybrid of the two. A documentary fictional movie.
Awesome.
Blair Witch is known first and foremost for its filming style. It was one of the first movies to popularize the idea of found footage. The premise is this. 3 film students go into the Black Hills woods outside of Burkittsville, Maryland, to film a documentary about a legend known as the Blair Witch. They were never seen again, but their footage was recovered, and it was cut together into a movie.
Yeah.
So Dan Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez put together their story based kind of on the Salem witch trials a little bit. They liked the idea of people being demonized for behavior that they're not even doing. You're a witch, so that justifies us pressing stones.
Right.
Stoning you to death and burning you at the stake.
And being worse than what we're even accusing you of.
Right, exactly. So a lot of the legend of that first movie that the film students learn about, before they ever go to the woods, they interview people in Burkittsville, Maryland.
Right.
Now, in the movie itself, in the Blair Witch Project, 1999, the original movie, it opens with the 3 students walking around town, talking to people around Burkittsville, asking them if they've heard of the Blair Witch, and all of them have, because she's a local legend. But here's how that was accomplished.
Yeah.
They asked actual people, and the directors planted actors around town.
Right.
So they might walk up to somebody who's a waitress in a diner and ask her if she
So
knows about
awesome.
the Blair Witch, and she would suddenly start telling them what she's heard about her.
Right.
And they don't know who's an actor and who's an actual person.
Right.
And there are actual people, real people that lived in Burkittsville, Maryland at the time of filming that are in the final movie. It is amazing.
It's so sweet.
So, for example, they talk to an old man who tells them about a guy named Rustin Parr, who was a kind of an old hermit that lived in the woods and was responsible for killing a bunch of kids. See, he took these kids into his home, and then he would take them 2 by 2 into the basement, and he'd make one stand facing the corner while he killed the other one. And then he'd kill that one.
Yeah.
He didn't want the kid to watch him. But he did that 2 by 2.
That story just alone is so freaky.
This is in the 1940s,
Yeah.
too, so not that long ago.
Right.
And then Rustin Parr comes down out of the woods one day, and he walks into the local grocery store, and he says, "I'm finished now." Nobody knows what the hell he's talking about.
Finished now.
They just know that these kids have been going missing. And then they find out about all the kids that he killed. One survived. I'll get into that. Kyle Brody. They talk to a woman who's carrying a baby. This woman was not a plant,
Yeah.
but when they asked her if she knows about the Blair Witch, just went, "Yep, I know about the Blair Witch," and starts talking about how she saw a documentary on TV or something.
She's so good.
Must have seen it on the Discovery Channel or something. Anyway, it was about ghosts and legends. She saw that it was about 2 men out hunting, how they disappeared and they were never seen again, disappeared off the face of the earth. As she's telling this story, the baby she's carrying, it's like a 2-year-old or something, is getting so scared and covering her ears, tries to cover her mother's mouth at one point. That woman just started telling that story.
So good.
And it was so perfect,
Yeah.
they had to put it in the movie.
Yeah. Lightning in a bottle.
Really, honestly. Really unbelievable.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
how likely was that?
It's insane. They must have just been like, well, they don't know in the moment, they don't know who's a plant and not. But when they looked at the footage and heard the people, they're like, wait, did we hire her?
Yeah. Because it's also, it's worth mentioning that the way this movie was made was incredibly unconventional.
Right.
Dan Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez wrote a 35-page script. And script is essentially just like beat by beat what should happen. Almost like how Curb Your Enthusiasm is done. Larry David will be like, we fight about me losing the TV remote.
Right.
All right, action.
It's a good fight.
And then you just act it out.
Yeah.
That's how they did the Blair Witch. Even further than that, though, because it's found footage, they deliberately hired an actor, Joshua Leonard, because he knew how to work a camera.
Right.
The actors in the movie, there are 3 of them, Heather, Mike, and Josh. They are the camera people and sound people of the Blair Witch Project. For real.
Yeah.
They were left to walk around in the woods and stuff. The crew would be camped like a mile or 2 away. They could communicate with a walkie-talkie. They had a safe word if something went wrong, which was taco. But by and large, they would just, in the morning, leave a little care package with a little bit of food and say...
With a little bit of teeth and hair?
well, yeah. And be like, walk south today.
Right.
Walk to the creek. and you're going to argue about the map.
I guarantee you I would get lost even with that crew with me and everything. Like,
Without a doubt.
if you told me to walk south right now,
Yeah.
I don't know where the hell?
I don't know how to find south.
No.
Are you crazy?
Yeah.
And so that's how the movie was made. So within the movie, they interview people that talk about local legends of the Blair Witch. Heather talks about this cemetery where most of the graves are children, and nobody seems to want to talk about that, really. They meet a woman named Mary Brown, whose gate to her trailer is made up of twigs that are tied together with twine.
Yeah.
And she's a very frightening woman who talks about how she saw the witch as a child, and the witch appeared to her as a tall creature wearing a shawl, and she was covered in fine hair like a horse. You know, like horse hair.
Fine hair. And P.S. horse hair is not fine.
No, it's not.
That's a coarse hair.
That is not fine by me. They meet two fishermen who are arguing with each other about the Blair Witch and talking about how there are stupid kids out here that are always, getting lost in the woods and stuff. All of this sets up them actually going into the woods and encountering the following. They find 7 cairns. These are like little piles of rocks.
One of my favorite words and things.
A cairn, yeah. They eventually, they are sleeping. They keep getting lost. They keep walking in circles. So somehow they keep going back to where they first started, which seems impossible. They can't seem to get out. They're in the woods for way longer than they planned to be. They're in the woods for about 7 days. They encounter one night the sounds of children laughing and pushing in the sides of their tent. When they get outside the tent, there's nobody to be seen. And yet, as they're running off into the night, you hear Heather going, "What the fudge is that?
Yeah.
What the fudge is that?" Freaking out. You don't even see it. She doesn't turn the camera just right. When they filmed it, there was a person there running alongside them wearing all white, but they didn't turn the camera so it didn't show up, creating one of the best moments in any movie.
Completely perfect.
Screaming, "What is that?" The audience can't see it.
So you are like, what is that? Yeah.
Lights on fire.
Yep.
They wake up one morning and there are 3 more piles of rocks outside their tents. There were 7 before. Rustin Parr had 7 victims, and now here are 3 outside our tents. There are 3 of us.
Yeah.
Not only that, Josh's bag is covered in some sort of an ectoplasm type goo. He goes missing.
This movie is sweet as hell.
It's so good.
Anyway, sorry.
Josh goes missing. Heather finds a little satchel of twigs with what looks like a ripped piece of Josh's shirt, and when she opens it up, there's a bunch of blood, little pieces of flesh and teeth in there. Mm-hmm. And then they find Rustin Parr's house. The serial killer from the 40s who abducted 8 children and killed 7 and made 1 stand in the corner. They find his house. And they go walking through, screaming for Josh. This is now Mike and Heather running around, can't find him. Mike goes into the basement. Something goes wrong. Heather follows Mike into the basement and sees him standing in the corner when suddenly there's a thud. Her camera drops to the ground and the movie is over. No one has seen these kids since.
It's so good. I remember seeing that movie in the theater so well. I was very freaked out. Like, I knew that it was fake and everything, but it's just so good and so freaking. I remember on the way home that we drove by, like, probably just power lines or there was something like that. But I remember thinking that they, like, kind of looked like the stick men.
Right.
And I loved it. Yeah.
I went to Burkittsville recently, sometime in the last year, beginning of this year.
Yeah.
I went to Burkittsville with CWS of Behind True Crime from Hunt a Killer. And I deliberately stole a bunch of sticks and made stickmen myself.
Yeah.
So using actual sticks from Burkittsville. Now I do want to point out that the stickmen in the movie are not from Burkittsville. They're from Black Hills Woods. That was another couple hours away. We did not go that far. So my stickmen are not authentic.
I think they're pretty close. I think that's a pretty great representation.
I will go to the Black Hills Woods one day, though.
Yes.
I warn you.
And also one time, so Will made a handful of those. I have a couple at home. One time I was watching Will's dog while he was gone, and I took the liberty of stringing up a bunch of those stickmen above where we sit to record the podcast, not unlike the stickmen are hanging from the trees in the movie.
Yes, and I still kept one of them hanging above our head every night when we record this show.
Yeah. There's a stick man.
There's a stick man hanging above us.
Yeah.
I have them in the
Blessing
windows
us.
here, and I always wonder if like school kids walk by and see the stick man and stuff. So that's Blair Witch, the movie.
Right.
Now, within there, all they really ever talked about was like a woman floating off the ground covered in horse hair.
Right.
There was also a story about a girl that went missing named Robin Weaver, and a search team went out to find her. And then that search team was later found on Coffin Rock
Yeah.
in the Black Hills woods,
Coffin
disemboweled
Rock.
with strange symbols carved on their skin, tied hand to foot to each other.
Yeah.
None of them mention a woman named Ellie Kedward.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing in the Blair Witch Project mentions
Right.
this person. However, Ellie Kedward is the person that is believed to be the Blair Witch herself.
Mm-hmm.
But where people did hear about her was in Curse of the Blair Witch,
Hell yeah.
a short fake documentary that aired on the Sci-Fi Channel before the Blair Witch Project came out.
Yeah.
It was also found footage. This was interviews with family members of the cast, their characters.
Right.
Heather Donahue's film teacher, and they like show a weird old witchcraft show that's like a public access kind of show.
It's sweet.
Oh, it's great. And they talk about the legend of Ellie Kedward, this woman.
The legend of Ellie Kemper. She's done well for herself.
She has. Who in 1785, a bunch of children in the township of Blair, which would later become known as Burkittsville. In Blair, many of the children said that Ellie Kedward took them back to her home and tried to draw their blood.
Yeah.
Now, the townsfolk, seeing this as some sort of dark witchcraft, banished her to the woods. In the wintertime, many of her accusers and half the town's children turned up dead.
Yeah.
And
Not so hot.
And so, essentially, because of that, many people go, Ellie Kedward is the witch. I say no.
Nay.
I say nay. However, many people have seen the image of an old woman in the woods. Just like Eileen Treacle, one of the first settlers of Burkittsville. For you see, after Ellie Kedward was banished and all those people turned up dead, everybody fled the town of Blair.
Right.
All right? And then
It's
later
not
on,
safe.
somebody comes back and they start to found the town of Burkittsville. One of these original settlers is Eileen Treacle, who on a
Great name.
Great
I
name.
can't get enough of the name Eileen Treacle.
I completely agree. Who on a harvest festival day goes too near the Tappy East Creek.
Ooh.
And witnesses say they see a ghostly white hand reach out of the water, pulling her under. Eileen Treacle's body is not found. She somehow drowned in about 2 inches of water.
Right.
It's a little creek. And then not long after, the creek is clogged up with oily bundles of sticks, rendering the water unpotable for 13 days.
Awesome.
Oh, it's the best. It's the best. That's where people get the idea that Ellie Kedward is the witch.
Right.
And then it's really enhanced from there in Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2. A sequel which came out 1 year later.
Enhances everything, if you ask me.
Oh my God. Now, this is one of the most notoriously terrible movies of all time.
Yes, and I love it.
Blair Witch was a mega smash hit. It was one of the most, the highest return rate, like from budget to, why am I failing the box office? It was one of the most profitable movies of all time. Created its own genre of found footage, essentially. And then, even at like Sundance where they aired it, they did crazy cool stuff. They put up missing posters of Heather, Josh, and Mike, to make people really think that these people had gone missing. On IMDb, they listed the main actors as missing and presumed dead.
Right. Which is so awesome. I remember the website that they had put up before the movie came out. It was the missing persons things were on the website.
The website was one of the biggest things going for it.
Yeah.
It's one of the first examples of like really effective online marketing. A lot of people attribute that to the actual success of the Blair Witch Project, the fact that they had this really interesting website where you could go to view videos and behind the scenes story. And it made it feel a lot more authentic.
It was very immersive.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember being obsessed with it. I thought it was so awesome.
So cool. So anyway, 1 year later, they're trying to figure out how do we do a sequel to this thing, and they made every wrong decision.
It is so nuts, this movie.
Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2 is essentially an example of what not to do.
It's like a 180 degree turn. It is such a bonkers movie where like Blair Witch is understated and kind of slow and lets things happen organically. This is like fast cuts and like cool music. And it is the weirdest movie. I love it, to be clear.
Oh, I love it.
I love watching this movie.
I have a blast with it.
Yes.
It starts.
But it stinks.
It starts great. And some things on paper are okay.
Yeah.
It's directed by Joe Berlinger, who did the Paradise Lost
trilogy. Who does good things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it starts with a character named Josh. Oh, no, Jeff. I'm sorry, Jeff. And he lives in Burkittsville. One of the biggest mistakes this movie makes is they make the Blair Witch Project a movie within the reality of Blair Witch 2.
Yeah.
So Jeff is a big fan of the movie, The Blair Witch Project, and living in Burkittsville, he's made a little cottage industry doing things like selling stick men and going on guided tours.
I think that could be good. I think that there could be a way that you do that and it's good. Like that you're living in a post The Blair Witch Project world came out. Because if it's a documentary, The Blair Witch Project, if we're assuming that this thing that they put out is real and it's not hokey and you're just like, man, those kids disappeared not far from us, that could be good.
It could be. You could do it correctly.
Yeah.
Like any story can be told right, but it can also be told wrong.
Yes.
You could have done what they did do right after the first movie came out. They released this dossier. This is a book written by a guy named D.A. Stern that essentially
it's really, really good.
It's one of my favorite books, full stop. The Blair Witch Dossier. I highly recommend everybody read it, or listen to our review on Book Club Schmook Club, our previous show. This explains some of the events of the Blair Witch Project, such as facts that, lend a creepier air to things that happen in the movie.
Yeah.
The Blair Witch Project ends with Heather, Mike, and Josh running through Rustin Parr's house. This book makes it more clear that house burned down decades ago.
Right. So this kind of like, it messes with your concept of the timeline and how this could be possible. Like, what are they talking about? When is this written? It messes with you.
And that does things on both sides.
Right.
So how could they be walking around that house if it burned down decades ago? That suggests the paranormal.
Right.
But then they also say that the soil has like opium in it.
Yeah.
Which suggests that maybe these people went crazy, lost in the woods all this time, and essentially killed themselves and each other.
Right.
In a manic, blur.
And what's nice is that it doesn't retcon it. It doesn't take away from what you saw.
It builds.
It just builds on it and makes you wonder about what you saw. But it's not like, well, this couldn't have been real. It was still their experience either way.
Right.
But like, how did that become their experience then?
Yeah. No, this book, The Blair Witch Dossier, is a wonderful yes and of the Blair Witch Project.
You're right.
And one of the things that they do is they talk about how a couple of filmmakers were tasked with going through all the endless hours of footage that Heather, Mike, and Josh shot and cutting it into a film.
Yeah.
And the fact that the family of these people are of mixed opinion of whether or not that was a good thing to do. You could have taken that idea for a sequel and been like, that's true. The movie starts with like they were never seen again, but their footage was found.
Right. So like
who are the people who did this?
Yeah.
So you could pick up from there and have the Blair Witch Project be a movie that was massively successful and look at what happened as a result of that. But no, they say it was a fictional story.
Right. Oh yeah. I'm not saying that that's a good idea.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So Jeff in Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2 is obsessed with the fictional movie Blair Witch Project and takes a bunch of people on guided tours of the Black Hills Woods.
Yeah.
They say that the movie is based on a real legend.
Right.
So that's how they kind of fudge it a little bit.
Right.
It's a mess. It's too hard to explain to really get into. But there's like a couple that's writing a book about folklore. There is a witch.
Yeah.
Like
like a Wiccan or a pagan. I'm not sure which one, but
there's a goth character.
Yeah. She's taking a nap on a coffin.
Oh, she's
it's on
Treacle's coffin.
Yes, yeah.
When the movie opens,
so good.
And they just kind of kill each other. It's
pretty much.
It's a real mess.
Yeah. Sometimes there's sex and nakedness. It's a very
sort of
early 2000s or late 90s kind of movie.
The way you can look at it, and this is kind of the way that I do look at it. The Blair Witch Project sets up all these legends, and then they pretty much go off and do the Rustin Parr one.
Yeah.
Right. Like. It's all about, they're all going there for the witch, but then they end up at Rustin Parr's house.
Right.
7 Karens on the ground. They're facing the corner at the end of the movie. It seems to shift from this legend of a lady that was banished to the woods and haunts the place to here's this serial killer.
Yeah.
Like, it's
and maybe was he like influenced by the lady who haunts the place?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Well, he is said to have heard voices of somebody telling him to do these things, an old woman.
Right.
But like, you could make a very compelling argument that the supernatural force in the Blair Witch Project is not the witch. It's Rustin Parr.
Absolutely.
It's the ghost of Rustin Parr.
Yeah, it completely. Yeah, that's what makes what makes the most sense by far.
Yeah. I've seen countless theories online saying that like Josh killed Mike and Heather. Mike killed Josh and Heather.
Right.
Heather killed Josh and Mike. Josh and Mike teamed up to kill Heather. And I don't see anybody going like, well, wait a minute. There's this one legend, and then everything seems to follow that.
Yeah, all around. You go to Rustin Parr's house, not the witch's house.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
It seems obvious.
Yes. So I think
Plenty of that nose on your face.
The sequel seems to follow, I think, the story of Coffin Rock and Robin Weaver.
Yeah.
All those people that went out to find the little girl who went missing had symbols carved on them.
Right.
The characters in Book of Shadows have symbols carved on them.
Right. A little girl shows up at one point.
Yep. That is the ghost of Eileen Treacle. She wiggles around and it's really stupid looking.
Yep.
They tried to do a whole thing with like the footage, like finding their own footage.
Yeah, there's like lost time that they're reviewing footage to fill in the cracks of.
Right.
It actually, that again could be kind of cool. It's kind of sweet that they're reviewing this footage and there seems to be nothing there, but then it's just kind of like smushed in real quick of them doing crazy, like murderous stuff.
Yep. Absolutely.
It's pretty sweet.
I mean, some of the ideas are great. And there is a theory out there that the original intention of Joe Berlinger was essentially steamrolled over by the studio who saw what he was doing as something that was less approachable and understandable than what they wanted. And so they added in footage of people being murdered and recut everything and put Marilyn Manson music on it.
Yeah.
So there are petitions online for them to release the director's cut of Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
And there are people that have made fan cuts of the movie based on comments Joe Berlinger has made about what his original vision was like.
Yeah.
So there is a chance that there's a good movie hiding in.
Yeah, I think he's a good filmmaker, so I don't not believe that.
And there's a whole game in the movie too about things being in reverse.
Right.
Look up The Secret of S. Rever.
Yeah. Oh.
In relation to Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not going to say anything more about
it.
Okay. But they also tried to release their own dossier. Going from the Blair Witch Project dossier to being one of my favorite books. This is a big snoozer. It's also
less
written
successful.
Yeah, it's written by D.A. Stern again, who does a damn good job of trying to make the characters.
Yeah, but there's just like
interesting, but it's very hard.
The source material, first of all, like there was kind of like nice bare bones that you could build musculature onto for the book from movie to book for the other one. This one had way too much musculature to begin with. There's not that much you can do with it.
No, but they do weird things where they suggest that a ghost haunts an online chat.
Oh, that's right. I love that part.
That happens in the book.
I forgot about that.
So that's cool.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah, what's the ghost? It has like a screen name and everything. Or no, it's taking over somebody else's screen name.
Yeah.
Like okay.
Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2 basically killed the franchise.
Yes.
It did poorly. It was incredibly negatively reviewed.
Right.
But still rumors of a third Blair Witch movie persisted for over a decade.
Yeah.
Saying like, oh, is it going to be found footage again? They can't really do that again. What are they going to do? They've already said that the Blair Witch Project is a movie within the real world. This is pre-common reboot culture.
Right.
So it wasn't a normal thing to be like, just erase that second movie and do a new one.
Yeah.
And there were constantly discussions of doing a period piece about Ellie Kedward, going back and telling the story of the witch in 1785 and what happened to her and how this whole thing got started. Very slow, methodical period piece.
I'll still take it. You know what? It would be sweet if they did. You know how like there's obviously a real trend toward TV and a lot of things in horror in particular. Like there's good horror on TV.
Yeah.
It'd be sweet if they did kind of like a prequel Blair Witchy thing maybe on TV. If there was some sort of thing about Ellie Kedward and or Rustin Parr and the whole gang. Yeah.
I have good news for you.
What?
They're working on a Blair Witch TV show.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe I knew that.
Yeah. Eduardo Sanchez.
That kind of rings a bell. I think I knew that already. Yeah.
So that idea, though, the period piece about the witch.
Yeah.
The movie The Witch.
Yeah.
Which came out 2 years ago. And is an amazing movie.
Yeah.
If anybody has not seen it out there.
Yeah.
It's called like The Witch, a Northeastern folklore.
Something like that.
Or something like that. In my head, that's the prequel.
Yeah.
You know, I know it's not. But
interesting.
In my head, that or an event very similar to that happened, and that created the haunting of the Black Hills.
That works for me. Clickety clackety.
Clickety clackety.
I am the witch of the woods.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So good.
Oh, that movie is great.
Yeah, it is.
It makes solid watching with the Blair Witch movies too.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've never thought about that before.
Yeah.
Cool.
So let's talk about some of the real obscure storytelling of the Blair Witch, because people know about the movies.
Yep.
But before they made that movie a couple years ago,
right.
Blair Witch by Adam Wingard and Simon Barrett, there were a bunch of other things that came out. I'm not going to get too into them because I'm already talking a lot. But there
I'm
are a
liking
bunch
it.
of comic books. Usually what they do is they either retell the events of Rustin Parr killing those kids, or the story of Ellie Kedward, or the drowning of Eileen Treacle, or
Yeah.
Robin Weaver going missing, or they tell stories about people that are caught up in the witch's magic. So there's like a guy who loses his vision.
Yeah.
She like takes his eye and he can still see through it in the woods.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
Yeah. There's a guy that becomes like obsessed with the Blair Witch. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, but there are many. So if you
Sweet.
want to look them up, look up the Blair Witch Chronicles. That's a 4-issue series.
I forgot that was a thing.
You could also look up Blair Witch Dark Testaments. And then there was a comic book that they just called The Blair Witch Project, but it was put out by Oni Press, so you could probably find it that way.
Cool.
Those are all right.
Yeah, I was like, are they good? What do you?
I enjoy them,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't recommend them to anybody who's
Okay.
not going to be a super fan about it.
Yeah.
I have this. This is called Wood Witch Said. It's frequently referenced as a book that was like put together by a cult.
Yeah.
The Blair Witch cult.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't necessarily realize that it actually exists, but it does. It's very visual
Yeah.
heavy. It's almost like a photo book kind of thing of a lot of the artwork from the comic books and stuff. I think is reprinted here.
Yeah.
Short stories and stuff.
It's cool.
Yeah, so that's interesting. D.A. Stern wrote another couple of books. He wrote Blair Witch, The Secret Confession of Rustin Parr. This is essentially Rustin Parr's autobiography, I think.
Yeah.
He also wrote another book called Blair Witch, The Graveyard Shift, which is only available on Kindle, which I have. And I read it, and I don't remember what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't read that.
Okay, but here are, let me get out some of the other small ones, and I want to tell you about the ones that I really like.
Yeah.
They also made, after Blair Witch Book of Shadows, Book of Shadows Blair Witch 2,
Right.
they started releasing young adult novels called the Blair Witch Files.
So funny.
There are 8 of them. I have 2 of them.
Yeah.
They are very literally standalone stories that are tangentially connected to the rumors of the Blair Witch.
Right.
And they are about a character named Cade Merrill. He is Heather Donahue's cousin, and he's trying to figure out what happened to Heather.
Yeah.
And so, I think there's even a contest at the end of these that are like, hey, you want to be in Blair Witch 3?
Right.
Enter this contest.
That's amazing. Yeah. Win a trip to the set of Blair Witch.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Experience the horror of Blair Witch 3 up close. Tell us your brush with the supernatural in 150 words or less, and enter to win an all-expense paid trip to the set of Blair Witch 3. But at a certain point, it was clear that they were never going to make that movie.
Right.
And so people got like $1,000 instead.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Kind of cool.
Yeah.
All right, now here are the ones that I really, really like. These are the ones that really no one seems to know about.
Yeah.
There are Blair Witch video games. So around the year 2000, if you were a Blair Witch fan,
Yeah.
2000 was the year for you.
Yeah,
This
big
is like
year.
when everything comes out, basically. They released 3 games. These 3 games are made by 3 different developers.
Oh,
They were all
that's
released
weird.
in the same year.
Damn.
The third one they made, I'm going to go in reverse order because the first
Yep.
one is the one I actually like, was called Blair Witch Volume 3, The Ellie Kedward Tale. You play as like a demon hunter in Ellie Kedward's time, and you fight a giant monster.
Scary.
Okay. Blair Witch Volume 2, The Legend of Coffin Rock. This retells the Robin Weaver story. You play as a resurrected American Revolutionary War soldier.
Boy, there's a lot.
who
That's a
came back
lot.
from the dead to find Robin Weaver.
Okay.
Okay. And then here is Blair Witch Volume 1, Rustin Parr. You play as a character named Elsbeth Doc
Yeah.
Holiday.
Okay.
Doc Holiday.
Yeah.
She works for an organization called Spook House.
Okay.
This is all the developers of this game, Terminal Reality. They're also the developers of the really excellent Ghostbusters video game that,
Oh, yeah.
that Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis wrote, Bill Murray, and
Yeah.
everybody came back for it. They made a game called Nocturne, which was about this organization called Spook House.
Cool.
It's basically also kind of X-Files-ish. They hear about supernatural events, they go and investigate it. So when they were commissioned to make a game of the Blair Witch, they were like, well, our story's old time.
Yeah.
Let's just use our characters.
Right.
So they had their character from Spook House being ordered by her bosses to go investigate Burkittsville, Maryland, where a guy named Rustin Parr just killed a bunch of people, and they think something paranormal might be happening there.
Cool.
So you go to the town of Burkittsville, you can walk around, you can go to the diner, you can meet a bunch of people.
Yeah.
You meet Kyle Brody, the one child who escaped Rustin Parr, who was
Okay.
left alive.
Uh-huh.
You can walk through the Black Hills woods, and investigate. You go to Rustin Parr's house. And here are some things that you learn that I personally consider to be kind of canon to the story. Kyle Brody was sort of in on it.
Yeah.
The witch was telling Rustin Parr what to do to kidnap the kids.
Yeah.
She was also sort of possessing Kyle Brody.
Yeah.
And so he is the sole survivor.
Okay.
But as the victim, he's able to continue on evil work.
Yeah.
There's also an evil pastor who's helping all these events happen and the witch control the town.
Cool. Quick question about your view of canon. Because this is how I kind of feel sometimes. Do you think that you take things as, you're like, okay, so I take this as canon because you like it? If you don't like it, would you just be like, it's not canon?
Yeah.
Me too.
Absolutely.
Okay, just curious.
Yeah. I think it's personal to each person. Like, again, like I always view like everything that you enjoy is like you personalize it to yourself. So like, you know, somebody may make something a certain way, but I take it in differently from what they intended.
Right.
And what I get from it is what I want.
Right. You know? But also like somebody is making something with the intention of it all tying in. Well, you know, what I'm thinking of in particular doesn't really apply to this. If the same people who had made the Blair Witch Project made this, it'd be a different kind of issue then. Okay. This is different. So it's like, it's just canon in your mind. It's not officially like when George Lucas says like, yes, this is part of the Star Wars universe. I'm thinking about specifically the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find the movies, which J.K. Rowling has a hand in.
Right.
And there are things in this new trailer that I don't consider canon. But if I'm objective and I'm like, well, I guess J.K. Rowling wrote that and she wrote Harry Potter. So if she says it's true, it's true.
Right.
But I've separated them in my mind where I'm like, nope, that's not that's not the 7 books.
Reject what you want to reject and keep in what you want to keep in.
Yeah. Nagini is not a lady to me.
Harry Potter belongs to all of us.
That's right.
Yeah, it's true. That's kind of how I feel about stuff. So in this, you go to, okay.
Yeah.
So here's the big thing. How best to even say this? So I was at the height of my obsession was 2016 when the new movie was coming out, The Blair Witch.
Okay, that's fair to say.
They had been hyping up a movie called The Woods.
Right.
For like
I know, I love this whole thing.
For like a year or something. And they had all these posters of looking up at the trees in the woods, almost if you were lying on the forest floor.
Yeah.
And the tagline was, there's something hidden in the woods. Mm-hmm. And then at, I think, a Comic-Con or, you know, one of those things, they had a screening. So everybody files into this auditorium to watch The Woods. There's something hidden in the woods. And as it starts, they start talking about the Blair Witch in the movie, and it becomes abundantly clear that this movie is the third Blair Witch. They've made it, and it's out, and it's done, and we're watching it right now.
Yeah.
And when the lights come on, all of the advertising material, all the posters on the wall that said The Woods, there's something hidden in the woods, had been switched.
I know,
while the movie was
love
playing.
that.
And they were all replaced by posters for Blair Witch. Mm-hmm. And those trees that we were looking up at from the forest floor, they meet in the middle, and they form the iconic Blair Witch Stickman.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite, I mean, I don't know how many favorites I can call up automatically, but one of my favorite advertising campaign things ever. I love that whole thing.
I love that. It's such a brilliant
idea. It's so cool and so exciting.
It is. The phrase, there's something hidden in the woods, is so perfectly designed, it drives me nuts.
Yeah.
So, that movie, Blair Witch, a lot of people hate it. Really, really hate it. They went back to the found footage idea. They kind of amped it up because now everybody has a camera. We're following something like 5 people in the woods. Everybody has a camera, like a little thing, almost like a Bluetooth headset on their ear. Mm-hmm. So it's almost less found footage and more point of view. Yeah. You have everybody's point of view. They have a drone. They're able to fly the drone up and look at the woods from above. Similar to Blair Witch 1, they get lost in the woods, and paranormal things happen. Now, there's something going on with Blair Witch fans. Yeah. Where they think you can explain everything with real life terms. That somehow Heather, Josh, and Mike just went crazy. Right. And got lost and went nuts and died somehow. Killed each other. Everyone's wrong. Blair Witch Project is a paranormal movie. Yeah. There are supernatural things happening that for some reason people ignore.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Blair Witch, the new one, dials it up.
Yeah, I haven't thought that much about I mean, I know that that's a theory that it's not paranormal, but like, I don't think it's that. I don't know. I just don't feel that at all. So
there's that, and there's also the fact that people were like, Blair Witch Project never shows you anything. Right. You never see anything. So you make it up in your mind's eye. Blair Witch, they show you stuff. And people really rejected that. They're like, that's not what the original movie was. Right. To which my response was always, you're right.
Yeah, this isn't the original movie.
This is a new movie. Yeah. You gotta, at some point, if you're gonna keep making these movies, and they are, no matter what. They're going to make more.
Yeah.
They're going to make this show modern, I don't know, franchises being what they are. Nothing is going to go away. We're going to see a million more Blair Witch movies. It's going to happen. It makes money.
Yeah. This didn't make that much money?
It did.
Oh, really?
It did. They made back their money. They kept changing the goalposts.
Yeah.
Because I kept hearing that they wanted to hit X number of dollars.
Yeah.
And they did. And then I kept hearing them go, well, we really want to make this number of dollars. And they didn't.
Okay.
And so then they said it was a failure.
Gotcha.
That's my recollection of it.
Okay.
So, in the movie, characters are running around in the woods. Now there is
in the wood.
Now there's some question about, did Rustin Parr bring people to the basement or to the attic? That's new.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily like it, but whatever. They add in, there's a big long-limbed monster running around in the woods. There's literally, it's like a monster movie. It's like a Bigfoot movie. They're running around in the woods. You hear something stomping around in the distance. You hear trees falling over. It's very frightening.
I have to say, this is one of the actual scariest movies. Like, not necessarily best scary movies overall, but as far as me being tense and scared, this is one of the scariest movies to me.
I think
it makes me very nervous and scared.
Blair Witch 2016 is one of my favorite film-going experiences.
Yeah.
Of all time.
Yeah, it was great.
When the lights came on, when that movie ended, I felt like a little kid. I was so excited about what I had just seen.
Yeah.
And how tense it was and how it made me claustrophobic.
Oh.
There's a character that crawls through a tunnel.
I hate that part, actually.
It is agonizing.
Yeah.
Agonizing.
Yeah.
And it is very frightening. There's a wonderful haunted house. They go back to Rustin Parr's house. The entire premise is that Heather's little brother is trying to find her in the woods.
Yeah.
There's some ambiguity. A lot of people complain. They're like, why does he think he's going to find her? Like, my theory is that, like, he's a little nuts.
Yeah.
He kind of does.
They have a fair point.
Yeah, they do. They do. But I get it. Like, I feel like I understand it.
Yeah.
He thinks he's going to find her. What that means, realistically, is find her body.
Right.
But to him, he's in denial about it a little bit. On some level, he does think he can find her and save her.
And I think also that's you have to put emphasis on some level. Like, yes. I don't think he really, really thinks that, but I think he is hoping it. He thinks it's not impossible.
There's something that sets his expectations that's unusual. The movie opens, there's a video that's gone viral online that purports to be found from the Black Hills Woods, and it shows somebody running around with a camera, and then you can see an image of a woman.
Right.
And James thinks, oh my God, Heather went missing in those woods. Here's this like woman that's like covered in mud and blood in the woods. Yeah. Could Heather still be alive? So it's sort of warps it as well. He's got an expectation.
Yeah.
So they meet up with the guy that shot that footage, and they go to the Black Hills Woods, and they talk about how when they were young, they remember being part of that search team that was trying to find Heather, Mike, and Josh. Side note, in the Blair Witch dossier, they talk about how the search teams were out there looking for them while they were still out there. So while they're out there screaming Josh,
right,
people were out there screaming Heather, Mike, Josh, and they cannot hear each other.
Right.
Supernatural. And they find out, crazy things happen in the movie from there. A character gets like a weird worm thing in her leg. It's very gross.
So gross.
Very gross.
And it's just also just tagged on. It's just a body horror thing for no reason.
It does feel like it's out of nowhere and for nothing.
Yeah.
But yeah, they turn the stickmen into voodoo dolls. You snap one in half and it snaps a person in half, which I found very alarming.
I'm about to say, it was sweet though.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. And then they end up back at Rustin Parr's house again, which once again burned down decades ago.
Right. How could it be there?
As they're running around in the house, they create the footage they saw in the beginning of the movie.
Yes.
The woman
a time thing.
The woman that James saw in the footage was his friend Lisa, his on-again, off-again girlfriend Lisa, who catches her own reflection in the mirror. She's covered with mud because she'd been crawling around in a tunnel underground.
Yeah.
And James, who's been trying to find his sister all this time, two things. One, Lisa is an obnoxious film student, similar to how Heather was. So in a weird way, he gravitated to someone who was like the person he was chasing, his sister.
Right.
Two, I think he literally sees his sister. In the movie, James comes face to face with a ghost dressed very similarly to Heather Donahue from the first movie. I think he found her, and in trying to find her, like many people in horror movies, he got his wish, but it was twisted.
Yeah.
And he lost his life for it. Lisa and James find themselves in the attic of Rustin Parr's house, facing the corner.
So scary.
As this long-limbed monster chases them around this terrifying haunted house.
Yeah, and you barely see it, too. You see glimpses of it, and it is freaky.
The best haunted house sequences I've seen in a movie in years.
It honestly, it really is scary to me. We've talked about this on the show, like, oh yeah, it's scary stuff, but are you scared? And I'm usually like, no, I think it's cool, and I like that it's scary themed. Right. I found this scary.
It's very scary.
Yeah.
They keep running upstairs, and they run upstairs, and they're in like a dirty house that's been like, you know, the walls are caved in. There's dust everywhere.
Rain. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
And then they run upstairs again, and it's the same hallway, and it's as if it had been underwater.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's a ghost ship.
Mm-hmm.
There are behind the scenes features on the Blu-ray that explain how they built that house and how they did the camera trickery to suddenly make you be in the same hallway again, but it's different. It's aged more.
Yeah.
There's something going on with time in the Blair Witch. In the original movie, in the sequel, Book of Shadows, because their stuff gets reversed, and in the new one. Something has to do with time travel in the Blair Witch movies. There's even a shot in Blair Witch where they're in the attic, and all of a sudden, blinding white light
so cool
blasts in through the boards for just a second, then goes away. Never explained.
Yeah.
Was that a spaceship, or was that a day passing rapidly? They've been trapped in endless night for days.
Right.
So anyway, they're facing the corner. As the monsters clomping through. They're now saying that you have to face the corner so the monster won't take you.
Right.
Another sort of bastardization of the original legend.
Yes.
But my feeling is that legends are malleable. We've talked about it on Guys Who Are Known with many things. It's up to interpretation. I almost think that the monsters in the woods bend to your interpretation.
Yeah, they respond to what your interpretation of it is. And also they can't look at it directly.
Yep. Yep. What you hold true on earth, I'll hold true in heaven.
Yeah.
That's something that God said once, I think.
Yeah.
So what you believe kind of is real.
Yeah.
Also about interpreting media.
Right.
What you believe is really key.
Yeah.
So Josh and Lisa are facing the corner, and then Josh thinks he hears Heather. Rustin Parr thought he heard voices.
Sad.
Everyone thought they heard voices.
Yeah.
And he turns around and he's yanked away, leaving Lisa alone. And then she turns the camera so that she can film behind herself and see the little LCD screen, recreating the shot of Heather Donahue from the original movie where she says, "I'm so sorry." And she's trying to walk through the house backwards until she hears James whisper her name.
Yep.
She drops her guard for a second, turns around, and is taken. Camera falls to the ground. The over. So I say all of this to talk about time. And I say it to talk about the video game.
Okay.
There is a scene.
Tell me a little story about time in a video game.
There's a scene in this video game that takes place in the 1940s where Doc Holliday, this character who's been sent to Burkittsville, Maryland to investigate Rustin Parr's killings.
Yeah.
She goes through the woods and she finds Rustin Parr's house. She hears screaming. And she follows the screaming to the basement where there is somebody standing facing the corner and somebody else standing screaming at him, holding a video camera on her shoulder. When suddenly, a demon slams her on the back of the head and she falls to the ground dead.
Yeah.
In this obscure video game from the year 2000, 1 year after the Blair Witch Project came out, they show you what happened to Heather.
Yeah.
Heather was killed by a demon in that basement. They showed it to us. The great unseen thing.
Yeah.
One of the most iconic movie moments ever.
Yeah.
Is seen from another perspective in a video game released 1 year later and no one knows about it.
So awesome.
And it plays into the time travel thing as well. 1940s, there's this detective person. I guess she was teleported to 1998 to see that event take place.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
I thought you were about to blow my mind, although that does. It's completely awesome, but it's tempered a little bit because I thought you were about to say, and then she goes upstairs to the attic. And there's blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my God. The filmmakers were all into this stuff and they watch it. That's still fully awesome. But one of the things that I immediately on seeing the new Blair Witch movie thought, as much as I loved it, I was like, it's a shame he didn't literally find his sister alive. You know, he could have gone to the basement. I was really hoping for that.
I was so excited when
I was too.
When he goes into the basement, I was really excited because I was like, oh, we're going to see Mike facing the corner. We're going to see Heather.
Yeah.
And he's going to grab her shoulder, scaring her. She's going to drop the camera, creating the events of the finale of Blair Witch Project.
Yeah.
And they're going to be like, oh my God, she's not even going to recognize him because he was like a little boy.
That would have been
when
awesome.
She disappeared. And then the two of them, Heather and James, are going to run off together and maybe they'll even escape.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll be the first two people to escape from the Black Hills Woods when the Blair Witch has you in her clutches.
That would have been totally sweet.
But no, I don't think Heather wanted anything to do with the franchise anymore.
No.
It's also worth pointing out
I was really
after
hoping
that first movie. Those
yes.
performers got burned.
Yes.
Especially Heather. People said that she was like shrill and unlikable, and their careers were almost destroyed off of that insanely successful movie.
I know.
Only Josh really acts still today. Mike is going to be in a new show from Dick Wolf called FBI.
Oh, cool.
That's coming out soon.
Sweet.
I keep
watching
up with a lot
that
of stuff. I'm like at a Blair Witch Facebook group. They just did a Blair Witch experience.
Wait, really?
In Burkittsville.
You're a Blair Witch Facebook group? Add me to that.
I'll add you to it.
Okay.
They just did an event. There's a guy that does a lot of tours of Burkittsville. With
people
cool. They just did it for this year, but we should go next year or something.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, okay. I'm sorry. I'm going really, really long.
No, I love this. I asked you to do it because I knew you don't have all this stuff.
Let's bring it home.
Okay. Let's bring it on home.
What is the Blair Witch? What is she?
Yeah.
Is she that long-limbed monster running around in that house in the most recent movie?
Right.
A lot of people seem to think so. A lot of people were pissed about it.
Right.
Pissed. The original movie didn't show us anything. You're showing us everything.
Yeah. Remind me, where in this, as far as like which movie or book or whatever, where does the stuff about her being strung up come into it? Is that in the third movie or what's it in?
That's another one of the things that they twist in the most recent movie. They said that Ellie Kedward, not only was she banished in the late 1700s, she was strung up on a makeshift rack and she had her limbs pulled.
Right.
And so that's one of the ways that they try to explain this long-limbed monster at the end. Is that Ellie Kedward having her limbs stretched?
Yeah.
Now here's what I'm going to say about that. That monster might be Ellie Kedward.
Right.
It might be. I also think it might be Heather.
Yeah.
Somehow. Just like warped by the woods. I love the idea.
No, that's a big coinky dink.
I know. Plus, James sees Heather's ghost, so that already fulfills
I don't think
that.
so. Yeah.
But I've thought about it.
Yeah.
I think it might be Ellie Kedward, but I don't think Ellie Kedward is the witch.
Yes. That's what I think.
Rustin Parr said he heard voices. Robin Weaver said she saw an old lady.
Right.
Eileen Treacle was grabbed by a ghostly white hand and dragged into the creek. Ellie Kedward was blamed for taking people's blood and called a witch. There's nothing part of her legend where she says that she saw an old woman as well. I think she was purely a victim. I think that Ellie Kedward was demonized, and they used her to explain all the evil stuff that happens in the Black Hills Woods. But I believe the evil in the Black Hills Woods is much, much older, probably timeless. One of the other things that happens in the Blair Witch video games from 2000 is that you can go into the woods and you can meet a man who lives in a shack in the woods. And he explains to you this ancient evil that Native American tribes called Hakaitamix. It is essentially just like a force. It's an old evil that has cursed this region, this land. That Hakaitamix is the demon that we see clock Heather on the back of the head in the game. Right. So it's a little cartoon. It's very Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
but it's almost as if Slimer walked into the But, whatever.
Yeah.
It's kind of a metaphor still. I view it as anyway. They call it Hakaitamix. It's older than Ellie Kedward.
Yeah.
I call it unknowable. Yeah. I say it's not even called Hakaitamix. They can call it in the game, but people are fallible. Yeah. And we see that time and time again in all these stories. People remember a story differently from each other. They retell it differently each time they tell it. And so I think that even going further back, when you try to give it a name, that's not its original name. It's just a force. It's just a thing.
It's just trying to make sense of a thing.
Yes.
It's like Twin Peaks.
Yes, exactly. And that's why there are a lot of Twin Peaks references in this game as well.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
But that's why the strength, I think, of the Blair Witch and what I ultimately think the Blair Witch is storytelling. Yeah. As dorky as this is to say, not to turn into edutainment, but like we've been talking about, you incorporate the things you like into your interpretation of a story. Right. And like we've talked about with monsters for the past year doing Guide to the Unknown, they change by who told it. Totally. Everything goes back to like telling stories around the fire and drawing stories on cave walls. Right. And that's why they're the same version of something that's basically the same throughout different kinds of cultures and different places and different times. Yes. The Blair Witch is nothing more than a way for humans, modern humans, to try to explain something unknowable in the woods. Yeah, and pin it on something that they can understand so that they can vanquish. Yes, absolutely. And that's why everything goes back to her. Everybody explains everything bad that happens through the legend of the Blair Witch.
Yeah, because she's conceivable.
She's unknowable.
Right.
And this is all what I thought anyway. And then I had really interesting, the writer of the most recent movie, Simon Barrett, was very kind to me. He answered a bunch of questions of mine on Twitter.
Yeah.
When I first started the Haunted Sponge, page and everything, I just kept writing about the Blair Witch.
Yeah.
The original idea was I was going to write about anything I was obsessed with. But when I first started, I was only obsessed with the Blair Witch. You can find all my original blog posts and stuff on talkbomb.com. I kept writing about what is the Blair Witch? What do people think she is? Is she a wendigo? I think maybe we talked about that in the Wendigo episode.
Probably.
Is she an actual witch herself? Is she all these people? What is she? Whatever. And people have been asking Simon Barrett online, why just show the witch in the movie? That long-limbed thing chasing her. And he wrote back, we don't show the witch in the movie.
Right.
Which supports my theory.
Yes.
The witch doesn't necessarily exist.
Yeah.
It's something.
Yeah, there's something going on,
Maybe
but
it's not just one something.
Yes.
But everyone gets trapped there.
Yeah.
And when you go in, you don't necessarily know what you're going to get.
Right.
In the Blair Witch 1, they get Rust and Parr. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? And I think you could maybe make an argument that in the most recent movie, they're kind of haunted by Heather.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go. I mean, it's almost an anticlimax.
So good.
But it's one of my most loved things in pop culture.
Yeah. It's
is the
great.
fact that this thing is shapeless, amorphous, and it's kind of what you make of it. I really hope with the series, I hope that it gets
so what
picked
news
up.
is there about the series?
Really almost nothing.
Okay.
Eduardo Sanchez basically only said we're gonna try to make a TV show.
Okay.
With it. I'm really curious to see what they do because I think that it's hard to separate found footage as a format from Blair Witch as an idea, but I think it's time to do just that.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they're gonna do because it's another one of those things where the more you explain it, the less enjoyable it is.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I love about the French fries is because each one of these movies doesn't explain it.
Right.
They just show another crazy thing happening,
Which is kind of the whole thing. Other crazy things. There's dimensions and layers and stuff in those woods.
100%.
Yeah. So you just be seeing them from a different angle each time.
Yes. So I almost hope that there's just endless unknowable events taking place.
Yeah.
I do think that there is probably you could start a series being in the 90s, these 3 kids went missing. Basically yours and my idea of how to do Blair Witch 2, Book of Shadows properly. Right. Be this thing blew up and people want more, so we're going to try to make more, and then something goes wrong. Yeah. So it'd be a little bit meta, but it'd be about, you'd still be saying Heather was a real person.
Yeah. I'd be into that.
Yeah.
I'd prefer that. That's what I want.
I think I'd prefer that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Either way, I definitely want more.
Oh, me too.
I also have, just to continue the show and tell, again, if you're watching this on YouTube, you get to see all these little things that I've collected. This is a Blair Witch action figure. Now,
so let's describe.
I know
what we're
it's so
seeing.
ridiculous to have an action figure of what is famously just supposed to be
a concept.
Yeah, something that you're not supposed to see.
Yeah.
There's this guy, Todd McFarlane. He's a comic book guy and does action figures and stuff. And he had this Movie Maniacs series. And I remember seeing this in the mall all the time and wishing that I had these. He made a Leatherface toy. I've got Ghostface, of course. Yeah. Because I'm a big Scream fan. But Blair Witch. They made a Blair Witch action figure not long after the movies. The first 2 movies, I should say. And so it's totally fictional. So they basically just created. It's almost like a half tree, half lady.
Yeah. It really looks like a Wendigo.
It does look like a Wendigo.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Very sort of lanky, no hair. There are 2 variations. I only have the one.
I would say not even discernible as a lady. I think if you were just looking at that, you wouldn't guess that that's a female witch. It's kind of just a creature.
Yeah, it's kind of just a creature with the skin is almost like bark.
Right.
Like tree bark.
I mean, it's cool.
And it's wearing a gnarly shawl.
Right.
It's funny. And this means that they deliberately did not go with the horsehair description.
Yeah.
Given by Mary Brown in the first movie. They created something entirely different. And in many ways, it's obvious. Yeah. It's obvious to just create a giant monster that carries a weapon or whatever the hell. She seems to have an old scythe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here.
But it's a very weird thing. It seems to adhere to no rules.
And that's fine with me because once again, it's all about interpretation.
Yeah.
And even further.
So you could imagine that that's what was in the woods that Heather was saying, what the fudge is that?
Yeah.
Maybe it was that.
Todd McFarlane's just another person who has another interpretation of what this all means.
Sure.
So this is just as valid in a weird way. And even emphasizing the sort of like amorphous nature of it, there are variations on this action figure.
Yeah.
The version that I have has like tree limbs on its head. But there's another version, I don't know if you can see it on the back of the packaging here, that has like dreadlocks.
Right.
So they
and it's a little bit more skeletal. It looks like a person who's wasted away, and you can see like red blood and stuff like that, and teeth.
And you can almost see like organs coming out and stuff.
Yeah, it's totally different.
Again, like, nobody could make a decision.
Yeah.
No one could decide what the hell the Blair Witch is supposed to look like. It's great.
We don't know.
It's great.
It's awesome.
Yeah, so there you go. I think maybe I could just keep going. I could. It would be very easy.
Yeah.
But I recommend everybody to check out the movies, all of them, including the terrible book.
Oh, totally.
Witch too.
It's totally worth watching.
Absolutely. I recommend you read the Blair Witch dossier for the first movie.
Yep.
That is one of the best books I ever read, honestly.
It's
the way
great.
that I enjoy it anyway.
I was so surprised at how great it was.
Yep. And I recommend you listen to Kristen's and my review of both dossiers. They're in a single episode on Book Club Schmuck Club, our old show. You can also read my blog post that I wrote all about the Blair Witch, where I theorize endlessly on talkbomb.com. Thanks to Simon Barrett. For helping. I also wrote a review of their commentary track because right after, right after Blair Witch,
controversial commentary.
Oh, for sure, it's so funny. After the Blair Witch, the new one came out on Blu-ray, I immediately got it. I immediately listened to the commentary track, just curious to see what they would say. They recorded it right after finding out that people hated their movie and that it was being considered a flop.
Yeah.
So Adam Wingard, the director, and Simon Barrett, the writer, are basically sitting there with their arms folded, being like, "Well, we ruined it."
Yeah.
Probably the worst time to record a commentary
For
track.
sure. For sure.
So throughout the commentary, they keep saying like really sarcastic things where they're like, all right, look at this monster. I was going to tell you what it was, but you know what? Should we tell them? Should we tell them? And the other one goes like, no, screw them. They didn't support the movie, so why should we? And I was sitting there going like, I did support the movie.
Right. But I did.
I'm watching it right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're the kind of nerd who's listening to a commentary track, you're obviously supporting the movie. Haters aren't listening to commentary tracks.
For sure. Yeah. So the funny thing is, I understand.
Yeah.
They were never going to tell us anyway.
Yeah.
It would ruin the point.
Right.
The point of the Blair Witch is to not.
No, they were just being weird.
They were just being weird.
Yeah.
They were making the best out
they
of
were
the
joking
situation.
It's a little bit of gallows humor almost.
So
like sitting with your friend who you worked on this thing with, and you find everybody hates it, and you have to comment on it while it's on. You're just like in a weird headspace.
Totally. So I completely understand it, but it still didn't make it a very fun documentary or a fun commentary. So I wrote a review saying basically that. I was like, I don't really know if I recommend. Here are the key things. And I was like, they weren't going to tell us anyway. So just bear that in mind. And then people wrote a ton of things about how they're like, they didn't even tell us. They said they were going to tell us and they didn't. And I'm like, they were never going to. They're pulling your leg. And then Simon Barrett and Adam Wingard read my review and shared it. And they were like, this is a pretty fair review.
Yeah.
And I felt very good about that. Because I think I understood. I think I get it.
Yeah.
I think I get the Blair Witch.
Well, I think you get the Blair Witch, but I think it's also just kind of like empathizing with a human.
I think I get it.
I think you do.
I think I get it.
Yeah.
And to that point, getting lost in the woods from a monster?
Can you imagine? I can't get enough of media that has to do with getting lost in the woods from a monster.
Yeah, I hope.
And I guess it's a good thing, right?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Everybody, pay attention to the Guide to the Unknown feed on Wednesday, October 24th.
That's right. Finally, solid, right? That's a solid date.
Yes.
Yep. So
pay attention. It cannot change.
Yeah.
If it changes, there's a huge problem.
Right.
So everybody pay attention to the Guide to the Unknown feed. We're going to release a special episode on Wednesday, October 24th. Pay attention to our social media at GTTUpod, especially on October 24th.
Yes.
As well as at Haunted Sponge.
At Chillin' Kristen.
Because something big is happening on October 24th.
Something woodsy this way comes.
Yes, it does. There's something hidden in the woods.
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 Something hidden in the woods.
There's something hidden in the woods.
It is time. Thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of Guide to the Unknown. We really, really hope that you enjoyed yourself. I know I did. My voice is hoarse because I'm really not kidding. This stuff makes me pop.
I know.
I love the Blair
It gets
Witch.
me pumped.
I've got the Blair Witch on VHS.
It's
in
funny.
mint condition.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
It's great.
It's like this is the one that like ignited my brain.
Yeah.
Because it's about storytelling. It's about like the nature of telling a story and how endless it is.
Right. And I think because there's so many different forms of it with different kinds of like spins, it really gets you going that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Even more
And
so
that
than
so
the
many of them are
actual-
sweet.
Yeah, and it's funny because like my love of it is almost above the actual material.
Yeah.
Because it's like I love these individual
Yeah,
pieces.
you love it as a concept
Yeah.
of a thing, the way that something can grow and have offshoots
100%.
and everything.
It just like
yeah.
rattles around in my brain.
Yeah.
We should go to the Black Hills Woods.
Yeah.
So we can
Okay.
shoot a video.
Okay.
So we can do it from the place.
Yes. The place where it's hidden.
And it'll make sense for both of us to be there.
Yeah. Hot dog.
Oh, good news is on the horizon,
That's
everybody.
right, guys.
Ah, man. I'm very excited. I just got like a real burst of adrenaline. I'm very excited about something.
It's really awesome.
Wednesday, October 24th, you're going to hear more from us. And I hope you're happy with what you hear.
Yeah, I think you will be.
Yeah. But, once again, thank you all for listening. You can all go to,
What?
so I don't know, somewhere.
You can go to patreon.com/GTTUpod if you'd like to donate a little bit of money to us, for doing the show as kind of a thank you for giving you something to listen to and or watch. We've been doing just here and there randomly, little live after shows that are only on Patreon. So right now, I think there's probably like an hour and a half, if not more, of us talking.
maybe something like that.
That's only on Patreon. So if
Yeah.
you became a patron right now, you get access to the recordings of those live talks, and you'll get access to future live talks where we chat with you the whole time we're talking. Like when we record this show, we do record it live. So there's a chat going on while we're talking, but we don't pay attention to it because we don't want this to come out annoying when you
Right.
listen to it. But with those Patreon things, we're talking to you live. It's not just us talking to each other. So it's a fun
Exactly.
thing. That's
Exactly.
patreon.com/GTTUpod.
Yeah. So please check that out. And as I mentioned, always follow at GTTUpod. Kristen does an amazing job. She shares really crazy, awesome stories throughout the week.
Yeah.
Please also consider rating and reviewing the show
Yeah,
on
that'd
Apple
be great.
Podcasts. That would be great. Tell people that you enjoy the show if you enjoy the show.
Yes.
If you don't enjoy the show, don't tell anybody about that.
Keep it under your cap.
So we'll see you next week for more of us.
That's right.
But until that time comes, we must travel.
Back to the netherworlds go we. Bye.